All right. We're having problems trying to get my face up here. Man, I tell you, these people. Listen, everybody. Thank you for joining me on another edition of the Red Pill Diaries, the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on God's green earth. This is your platform for empowerment, education, and elevation. And I'm your host, Rashid. And I want to thank each and every one of you for giving me your time, lending me your ears and your eyes for this allotted time that we're going to be talking. We're waiting for Carl to join us. I'm going to hit him up in just a second. But just getting on the air, did you see how tough it was for me to get on the air? I was they would not, and this has to be attributed to StreamYard, not to YouTube. I give the credit where credit is due. I was having problems getting up on the platform, okay? So we got my guy. Got to bring him in. No further ado. I know everybody is looking forward to it. My daughter even said, "Hey, Dad, are you having Carl on? I got to watch this." My 5-year-old daughter, no lie, this is no lie. She says that every time I'm about to have Carl, my mom and my baby girl, that's one of their favorite people on the show, so I got to bring him on quickly. Carl, how's it going, my guy?
Hi, Rashid. How are you? Good morning.
Man,
Good
I'm doing
evening.
good. When my daughter heard it was you that was going to be on there at my 5-year-old, she was like, "Carl is going to be on." and my mom, she's as God is my, she's watching right now too. My mom is always like, "Just let me know if Carl is going to be on, Larry or Carl or like she loves to hear you guys." So Carl, um, let's just talk about right now. If you hear any noise going on, I'm having a hot water heater replaced, and my son and
I
I
don't
are
hear
doing
anything.
some renovation. So we'll ignore that. What is going on right now in the Middle East? And before you answer that, let me preface that question with this. I mean, with this right here. You know, there was reports of Israeli bombing of Iran, and when this report came out, I did not believe it, and I'm still halfway uh, like torn by that because I was watching a lot of Eastern news channels at the time of this, and then I was watching Press TV Live, and they were showing the actual areas where the so-called bombings were supposed to have taken place, and there were no bombings. The people were all the way you would think a normal city would be. Is this um, Israel in the United States trying to save face with small quadcopters from inside of Iran to try to save face? Because a source told me a few nights ago that the United States kept pleading with Iran to allow for Israel to strike some unimportant place just to save face, and Iran was like, "We're not going for that." What do you say on this matter?
Well, I mean, Israel had an opportunity right after the Iran counterstrike on Israel to just declare victory and be done with it, because what Iran did in response to Israeli bombing of Iranian embassy in Damascus is to send a message to Israel. So Iran targeted specifically military targets inside Israel. Even though they could, we all saw the picture of the Iranian missile flying on top of Israeli parliament. We know they could target the much more serious target, but Iran chose their target very carefully. They targeted the military target, specifically the air base where Israeli launched the airstrike on Iranian embassy, and Iran sent enough missiles and drones such that it put a stress on the Israeli air defense system. We all saw the videos where the Iranian missiles landed. So the Israeli claim that we intercepted 99% of the missile. That's all bogus. We saw the missile strike their target, and but again, Israel has a lot of propaganda power in the West. They a lot of the corporate media are basically doing their bidding. So they're already pumping out all the message, say, "Oh, our wonderful Iron Dome," or like it's working perfectly, 99% missile shot down. So that's actually an opportunity for Israel to stand down and say, "Oh, just declare victory. Look, we shot down 99% of the Iranian missile, even though it's totally bogus, and just say, okay, everything is working. This is victory, and then that was a chance for de-escalation because Iranian response was to send a message. I was talking to Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter said, it was a punch, it was a tap on the nose. It was put on Israeli on notice because what we saw was during the Iranian counterstrike, United States and its vassal states had to pitch in. U.S. and also Jordan, they also have to pitch in to help shooting down Iranian missiles and drones. So we know that if Iran just send a little bit more missiles and drones, they will all find their target because the Israeli Iron Dome system has been saturated. We know this for a long time. If you send enough missiles, it's going to overwhelm the anti-air defense system. But Iran was just sending a message, putting Israeli on notice, like, we have the capability. So this was a perfect opportunity for Israel to stand down. Yet Israeli government is not being rational. We know that they're trying to escalate the conflict further. But I think they don't. But they cannot carry out serious retaliation against Iran without U.S. help because they're going to need the satellite. They're going to need the U.S. providing the satellite intelligence and also a field. U.S. When Israeli if they're going to launch F-35 to strike in Iran, they probably need the air refueling capability of the United States to help them out. So we know U.S. right now is so overstretched in many fronts all across the world. They're engaged in the losing proxy war in Ukraine against Russia. They're trying to escalate in South China Sea against China. The last thing Biden administration want to do is get bogged down in Middle East. So they want to calm things down. But that's not Israeli plan. Israeli plan is to drag United States in deeper. So what we saw with the so-called Israeli strike on Iran, I think you're totally right. It's to save face. Just Israel is acting like a petulant child. It's like, okay, we gotta show them. We gotta show them that anybody who strike us, we're gonna strike back, even though Israel struck first. Israel has been striking Iranian target for over 10 years, and Iran always turned the other cheek. This is the first instance when Iran launched a direct strike against Israeli soil or occupy Palestine, really. Because another target Iran struck was a military base in Golan Heights, which is not even Israeli territory, right? Golan Heights is occupied Syrian territory, and so what Israel is doing is they're trying to save face, but they seem to have some, the Mossad they have some assets apparently inside Iran because it launches this quadrocopters. They can't launch it from Israel and make it all the way to Iran, right? And we know that. Right. So they must have some assets inside Iran that they activated to carry out the strike. And here in the West, we just receive propaganda from mainstream media, but thankfully people have other channels. I remember watching Noah Smith tweeting, say, "Oh, Iranian people love us Americans. They hate their government. I was watching, but now we have more media channels. I was browsing on Douyin, which is a Chinese domestic version of TikTok, and there's a Iranian girl who speaks perfect Chinese who is posting on Douyin explaining what the situation was inside Tehran. And she's saying, no, like, we're just carrying on our everyday routine, and there was nothing out of ordinary in Tehran. Tehran did not get hit at all. We're carrying on a normal life. Also, Israelis are being bastards doing this. And so Iranians are being patriotic. You know, it doesn't matter how they feel about their government. They're all proud Iranians, and they don't take kindly to the fact that Israel is breaching Iranian sovereignty and be acting like a jackass. but 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 I think at this point, the fact that Israel the striking capability against Iran is limited because you know because like I said, they will need the go ahead from the United States because they don't need logistic support from the U.S. military to carry out such a strike, and U.S. at this point does not want to escalate, doesn't want to get dragged into a wider Middle East war on behalf of Israel. And this is why they carry out that ridiculous quadrocopter strike against Isfahan. There's conflicting report. First, they say they struck the Iranian nuclear facility, and then they backtrack, says, "Oh, they struck a missile base." And you know, this is to save face. To save face that this also let us know that the Iranian strike on Israel actually hurt. You know, it hurt enough that Israel felt they need to do a counter strike. I mean, despite all the propaganda saying, "Oh, we intercepted 99% of the Iranian countermeasures," because Israel felt like they need to do something, even to the point they're willing to sacrifice and expose their you know, Mossad operation inside Iran. Because you know, right now, Iranian government is probably hunting down all those Israeli operatives inside the Iranian territory right now who launches quadrocopters. So it's hopefully this is a sign that things will cool off a little bit, because Iran, by striking Israel, has shown Iran has a deterrence. You know, if Israel is going to strike Iran, Iran will hit back, and this hope. So the thing is, if Israel is a rational actor, we would expect things to calm down already. Well, if Israel was a rational actor, they wouldn't have struck Iranian embassy in the first place.
Right.
But their whole game is to escalate all across the region, not just Iran, but Syria and Lebanon. Their goal is to drag United States in a deeper, wider war. And so Benjamin Netanyahu can stay on his position as a wartime president of Israel to save his own political ass. Because, you know, if he's not in office, he's gonna be in jail. You know, he's faced corruption charges, and I'm pretty sure those corruption charges are real. But as long as there's war, as long as he tried to show his voters that Israel faced existential threat, then he will be able to climb to power. And this is a motivation for which explain a lot of Israeli actions right now. But there is United States interest involved, because U.S. currently do not want to get to widen the conflict. So there's a hope that they will tamp things down a little, because Israel can commit atrocity in Gaza all they want. That has very little repercussions other than destroying the U.S. soft power across the globe. But there's very little possibility for like a hard power pushback. But Iran is a whole different ball game. You know, Iran, they have the capability to strike Israel and strike Israel hard. We saw that. And Iran strike was to demonstrate their capability. It wasn't to hurt Israel. It's to put them on notice, like, we could really hurt you if we want to. But they chose to hold back and do a very calculated and very measured response. You know, that's something that Israel could learn from. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see if you know, what Netanyahu come up next, because he's totally out of control at this moment.
Well, everything depends on war, lighting the Middle East ablaze, because not only is he facing charges, but I believe his wife is, and I believe his son is. But and while war is taking place in occupied Palestine, his son was vacationing in Miami with the security team. But I was watching Muhammad Marandi, and he was talking about he didn't know. He said a lot of what was going on in the news was the U.S. and the Western media psychological warfare to try to present it in a way that Israel exacted revenge from Iran, and now Iran must stand down and stuff. And he was saying that, and they were showing actual pictures, I mean, live videos of the sites that were supposedly hit, and there was, I mean, people were driving to their daily jobs and everything. Nobody was out of pocket, and they were interviewing some residents, and they were like, "No, all we heard was anti-aircraft guns, and it stopped after, I guess it downed the problems or whatever like that." And the international, the IEAE, the Atomic Energy Agency, stated that no Iranian nuclear sites were hit or even came close to being hit. I just saw that about 30 or 40 minutes ago on as a matter of fact, on Chinese television, because you won't get it over here. So saying that, when we look at what the West is trying to present, they are like, it's almost like when concerning Russia, they are more concerned with perception than reality. And if they can put it over on you that this took place, that is a win for them instead of them actually winning on the battlefield. Isn't that a sign of degradation and decline morally and ethically?
Well, Rashid, this is what the West doing best right now. I mean, West is the U.S. empire is crumbling on many fronts and it's falling behind. But one thing that U.S. still outshines everyone else is propaganda, because United States invented marketing. Like U.S. is very good at marketing, selling itself, spinning, wordsmithing. This is why even in AI, U.S. still have a lead in ChatGPT, because this is what U.S. leads the world in right now: copium production. And because they're selling what people wants to hear, because people don't want to hear that U.S. hegemony is coming to an end, and they want to hear everything is fine. It's like that doggy meme in the house of fire. Everything is fine, but everything is not fine. I think you can fool people. Some people some of the time, but you can't fool all people all the time. People are starting to waking up, and the only thing they can do is to convince the public and themselves that they're still doing a good job, when there's very little they could actually do to reverse the decline of the U.S. empire. I mean, what could U.S. do in Middle East at this point? All they can do is symbolic stuff, like they U.S. veto admission of state of Palestine as a formal member of UN just now, and listen to their speech. It's so Orwellian. They double speak. They said, "Oh, our vote against the state of Palestine's entry into UN does not mean that we oppose Palestinian statehood. We still support Palestinian statehood." Like, do these people listen to what they're saying? Everybody sees through the Western hypocrisy, and that they're not doing themselves any favors by doing this. Because what the United States could have done is they could have publicly stated, "Oh, we're a full ceasefire. We want ceasefire," but privately, still go to Israel and say, "Okay, we'll back you up. We just have to make some public noises about this to save our own reputation globally." But they're not even doing that. They're publicly. You still have Biden saying, "I am a Zionist." Like, that guy is not going to win the election, man. That guy's going to be out of the office in like 8 months. The way he's going. then why should people take him seriously? They're now floating another a trial balloon, offering Iran to restart the nuclear deal in exchange for them not to retaliate against Israel. Like, why would Iran trust United States on the nuclear deal when United States is the one that reneged on the nuclear deal during the Trump administration?
Mm-hmm.
The Obama started the nuclear deal with Iran, and Trump's completely scrapped it. Now Biden is offering the nuclear deal on the last year of his presidency. He might be out of the office in 6 months, and Trump comes back in and just scrap the deal again. Why would Iran trust anything Americans say at this point? U.S. has no credibility, and they're also interested to extricate themselves from Middle East so they can pivot more asset to contain China, because the empire is overstretched. The resource is limited. I mean, like when Israel is actually complaining they're not getting enough 155 artillery shells, so they can commit further atrocity on Palestinians, because U.S. can't even supply enough 155 millimeter artillery shell to Ukraine. And of course, we know Israel always gets a top priority because Israel is a golden boy. But the golden boy is not even getting enough supplies because the industrial capacity of the United States have been overstretched. The U.S. deindustrialized so much, they need to go to Japan and South Korea for help for naval buildup. They intentionally scale down the artillery production inside U.S. because it doesn't make enough money, because that's artillery production. That's like commodity. It's not high margin stuff. The real high margin stuff is F-35s, which has submarine capability, which can which can dive underwater, and because that's not enough kickback for all the top brass, and not enough grit for Lockheed Martin, to make artillery shells. And they're now trying to ramp up production after Ukraine war. They double the production, but that's not enough. And it's not. It takes time to start a factory, and so they have no intentions to widen the conflict in Middle East. I'm talking about from U.S. perspective, and they lack the capability. It's Israel that's acting as a spoiled brat at this point. They're lashing out across in all directions, seeking attentions, and they want the big mommy United States to come to their rescue. But U.S. is stretched thin at this point.
Well, as you say, we're watching the decline of the American empire, and as you were talking, I could not help but think about what I read on Global Times 2 days ago about how the Chinese are disengaging themselves from the U.S. and how they're selling off U.S. debt, and I believe it's down, or it will soon be down to $700 billion in holdings from 1.3 trillion. That is a major sign to the United States that, hey, if you want to play this dirty game, we too can play this game with you. And so with on top of that, we see the Russian ambassador and his team get up, and this is unprecedented. They got up at the UN Security Council meeting and turned their backs to the Israelis, the US, the French, and the British, and walked out. Are these more chips in the armor of Western supremacy? Because I was watching a clip from Boris Johnson yesterday, and he was talking about how the West needs to continue helping and supporting Ukraine, and he let the cat out the bag. He said, because if we lose in Ukraine to Russia, then this marks the end of Western hegemony. What say you on the matter?
Well, like the foreign minister of EU, Joseph Borrell, has said, the Western hegemony is already over. It's coming to an end. And it doesn't
Yes.
matter what they do in Ukraine. They're not winning in Ukraine. Their original aim was to grind down Russia, to trap Russia into a
Mhm.
quagmire, just like Afghanistan. But what has happened is a reverse. Russia is methodically degrading the Ukrainian capability, but by extension, the NATO capability, because Ukrainian forces are NATO trained, NATO equipped, and they are doing terribly on the battlefield. Like, if you actually think about it, the Ukraine's NATO trained, NATO equipped forces, they probably have more battle experience than the NATO troops themselves. They actually have been engaged in the battle for the last couple of years. So if you look at their battlefield performance against the Russians, I don't think the real NATO troops only gonna do worse. I mean, the only thing they can uh, say is, oh, but NATO, we have air superiority. We're gonna sending our planes to bomb everything. But that's ignoring the fact you are not fighting against Afghanistan or Iraq. You're fighting against Russia, and if anything, the Ukraine war that shows a limit of air superiority when your opponent it has a near peer capability in terms of air defense. So it's a fantasy to think that even NATO commit more resources, they're gonna stop Russia. The Ukrainian forces are being demechanized right now. Their equipment are all their fancy NATO supply equipment's all being destroyed, and NATO can't replace them fast enough. The Ukraine is running out of men, and they're running out of men, they're running out of equipment, they're running low on morale. It's just a matter of time. The Russia is very methodically consolidating their game. They're not in a hurry to kind of do a blitzkrieg on Ukraine at this point, because everything on the battlefield favors Russia. Russia, they have made some mistakes in the earlier part of the campaign. That's normal. That's normal. Like any military that haven't fought a large scale war for a long time, you're gonna have hiccups. But the Russian military have by now smoothed out all the hiccups, and their war economy is humming. Russia is plus the Russian sanctions. They're actually reversing the deindustrialization that was imposed on Soviet Union 30 years ago. Now the Russian factories are humming. They have a very low unemployment rate. The Russian army is larger than when the conflict started, and there's just no way they're going to win in Ukraine. I mean, for the West to win in Ukraine, right now we're looking at how much gain Russia is going to make in that front. So that's to say that, oh, if we don't hold, if we can't make a stand on Russia, on Ukraine against Russia, the Western hegemony is over. I say forget about it. Western hegemony is already over. You might as well cut the loss on that one. But this is a problem with the NATO bureaucracy, because that's how they justify their own existence. It's about jobs. It's about jobs, Rashid, jobs. So they have to protect their own ass. They have to continually justify all the defense spending that NATO have to pour into to military, because the NATO, by their constitution, each NATO country have to spend at least, I think it was 2% of their GDP toward defense. United States has been harping on all these new NATO members. You got to do more. You got to spend more to fulfill the NATO requirement. When all these money could have been diverted into actual building up the economy, the building up the infrastructure. But forget about that. Germany is being deindustrialized right now because the stupid Russian sanction that cut them off on the Russian gas. And you have Washington's voice. Washington's voice piece like von der Leyen and Baerbock saying Germany need to decouple from China to reduce their dependency from the Chinese market. You crazy? You first cut off your cheap energy resource, and then you're gonna cut off from your largest market. I mean, then what? What do you have left? And but these. I mean, so this is why they're panicking right now, Rashid. They're just scrambling. They don't want to do. They don't know what to do, but they can see their hegemony is crumbling. But only thing they can come up with is words and more words, and that's not doing them any good.
Right. And I was again, as Carl, you give your answers are so in-depth and so thorough. As you talk, my mind is spinning for more questions. Now, I see that the Prime Minister of Hungary, Orban, said that the NATO, he complained that NATO is one step away from openly intervening in Ukraine. Now, as we review what you said and review all the facts, we know that Russia's military industrial output far exceeds that of not only Ukraine and the United States, but the entirety of NATO. We see that Russia's economy has proven to be resilient, especially with the backing of China and the investments of the Chinese, and then the move towards centralizing BRICS as a global vehicle for politics and geopolitics. And we see that Russia has the most, I would say the Russian alliance has the most advanced air defense systems on the planet. And they have warplanes that match or exceed the West warplanes. How can NATO soundly make a decision to openly intervene in a war that they cannot be successful in, because the S-400s, the S-500s will shoot anything that the West has down when it comes to warplanes, and then the Russian Su-35s and Su-34s and the new fifth generation Felon warplane would then wipe the floor with the ground troops there. I'm soundly and rationally, how can they, with good conscience, put troops in harm's way just to save face? That is genocidal and absolutely insane.
Well, their whole point, their whole game in Ukraine was a proxy war. You know, they're trying to fight Russian to the last Ukrainians. Well, guess what? We're almost down to the last Ukrainians right now. Ukraine is running out of men. So what now? Well, this is why, you know, we hear crazy talks about sending NATO troops into Ukraine. You know, we already have NATO troops in Ukraine. NATO special forces, they're all over Ukraine acting as advisors, as observers, and, you know, and all these supposedly quote unquote mercenaries or volunteers, you know, those groups are infiltrated with all the U.S. intelligence services, and you know these people are already there. They're losing. There's not much they can do at this point. Are they really going to start a World War III? You know, just for what? For what? For how? I mean, people right now, even as propagandized as people are in the NATO countries today, I don't think anybody is willing to go to the front for World War III at this point. You know, they're ultimately they're not. They know enough about their own self-interest to know that it does not lie on the battlefield of Ukraine, despite the rhetoric of their politicians. I mean, like, who are the U.S. recruitment rate, military recruitment is all-time low right now. It's you know, they can't meet their recruitment target because people are tired of dying for the empire's wars. They don't want to go die for Israel. They don't want to go to Middle East for what?
Yeah, and we see that it's all about hegemony. It's not about something that is life threatening. It's not about something that is rational or sane or for national security. It's all about greed, power, and hegemony to be able to exert dominance over everybody. And I see in the chat someone wrote about this, and let me see, because my chat keeps going up quickly, and I wanted to bring this up because I did something about this. I mean, I talked about this on a Patreon stream. Oh, here it is. I'm gonna highlight this. Lex says last news. I think it means latest news. He was saying Russian saboteurs have put fire on American and British shell manufacturing meant for Ukraine. Also, Ukraine doesn't seem to have shell shortages. Well, about the second part, I'll let you handle. The first part of it, it was dropped in my ear that this covert war, because you remember a lot of petrol holding sites were being targeted by the United States and its allies in Russia against Russia. We see that armament places on the border were being targeted, all of this stuff. And then we saw a lot of fires in central Russia that were being started. And now someone close to the situation told me that this is actually back and forth, like with the derailing of the trains here in the United States, and also with the fire with the shell factory that was producing and manufacturing or trying to up its production of shells manufacturing for Ukraine. Do you see a covert war going on? And do you think that it will heat up to the point where they will have to confront each other militarily?
No, I don't think it was ever in the plans to start a direct war with Russia. Russia is a nuclear power. This is why they choose the proxy route in the first place. And you know what? Ukraine don't seem to have shell shortages because they're running out of artillery. The artillery is getting blown up. So they can't even put good use to any new artillery shells they have. You look at the Ukrainian military right now. They're being demechanized. Their tanks, their armor personnel carrier. Their artillery, it's all getting blown up. If you're gonna have are Ukrainians gonna fight guerrilla war with like small bands of people fighting with small arms? I mean, that's ludicrous. That's because right now Russia is not in a hurry to expand. To expand foothold on parts of Ukraine. I mean, the parts of Ukraine that Russia already took, they're rebuilding. I mean, look at Mariupol. Mariupol has been rebuilt right now. I mean, Russia had done that before. They done that with Chechnya. Chechnya was devastated in the Chechen War, and Chechnya now is a very stable, prosperous place. And Grozny has been completely rebuilt. That can happen when a Russian victory on the battlefield, finally brings stability. China is standing by, ready to invest, to expand Belt and Road projects to Ukraine. Prior to the war, China already have investment in Ukraine, but if there's stability, Chinese investment would come in for the reconstruction, for which there's a great need. And if you look at, speaking of reconstruction, so look at Kosovo. Kosovo has been occupied by NATO since 1990s. Has Kosovo been reconstructed? No, Kosovo is still a shithole. It's being overrun by criminal gangs, prostitution, drug trade. People in Kosovo are leaving for the rest part of Europe. I mean, this is Ukraine right now. Ukraine has been devastated. People are leaving. People are leaving for anywhere but Ukraine. The only thing that can bring Ukraine back on its feet, for like the amount of construction they need, Europe is not going to be able to provide that. NATO never, that's never NATO's intention. Look at the track record in Kosovo. that's the future of Ukraine if Ukraine is under NATO occupation. Versus the Eastern Ukraine, they're getting help from Russia and in rebuilding. So the only realistic chance for Ukrainians for a better future right now is an end to the war and a peace settlement, and then sign on with the Belt and Road project again with China, so they can get the investment they need for reconstruction. But that again, this is the people in Brussels, in Washington, they don't care about that because for them it's they're still making money from all the military industrial complex that's being geared up for this confrontation. They don't care if the Ukraine is devastated. That was all that in the words of Madeleine Albright, it's all worth it. It's all worth it because they're profiting off of it, and they're still maintaining their own position in NATO and in the NATO alliance. So yeah, we right now, I think all of us who watch this the geopolitics closely can see the Western hegemony is slipping away. Yet these Western leaders are so short-sighted because they're so focused on lining their own pockets. I don't think they're even serious about the long-term preservation of the Western hegemony. If they are, they would have played a lot smarter than they are. But right now, their real goal has always been to lining their own pockets. They may sell to their public as we got to do this so we can stay on top, so United States can be the top dog. But they're really just trying to squeeze more money for themselves and their families.
Okay, before we pivot, because I really want to talk about what's going on in Asia, and a little bit on what's going on in Ukraine, but we'll address something in the chat about Argentina. But before we address the thing about Argentina, I wanted to bring something up about because this Argentina has everything to do with China. But beforehand, I want to ask you about how do you feel about the United States moving, and she's moving in a very covert way to try to obstruct Asian unity, right? And you know how she's picketing and prying and trying to stoke tensions. I think she helped facilitate the Indian sale of BrahMos missiles to Indonesia, and I think she's openly talking about intermediary cruise missiles being placed in the Philippines and in Guam and in Australia, and she wants to tell us that this is par for the course. This is not directed at China to prevent China's rise, and this is not trying to hem China in. I want you to address that because that has everything to do with the outrage that America was feeling about the previous leader of Argentina leaning towards the BRICS. And now we have a U.S. push puppet in there that on one hand wants to ask China, hey, please don't pull your investment in your billions and billions of dollars out, and please keep the yuan currency swap deal with us because it helps us financially and economically. But hey, we want to join NATO. I mean, could you make sense of all of this madness and this insanity that is going on with this?
Well, the current Argentinian president is, he was great as a shit poster before he became the president. You can say anything when you are in the opposition because you are not actually running the country, right? And he got there's still he got he's appealing his base in the Argentinian society that want closer alignment with United States, want to adopt neoliberal policies. But he has to come to grip with reality, especially when now he is the president running the country. Realistically, United States what can U.S. offer to Argentina? Like, it's China that's throwing Argentina the lifeline right now. This is why a lot of the Latin American countries are signing up with the Belt and Road Initiative in the first place, because China can provide investment, invest in infrastructure, they invest in ports, they invest in factories, in industrialization. These things are the things that U.S. multinationals are not doing, because U.S. multinationals are more interested in making a quick profit, making quick buck, whereas China is investing for the long-term future. Because a lot of the infrastructure investment, they don't generate profit. They don't, at least they don't generate profit for in the quick term. Instead, you require a large amount of upfront investment to build them. But the whole plan of China is, you build it, there will come. When you build infrastructure, when you build connectivity, it promotes the trade ties. It helps the region to speed up the economic integration with China, which has the largest manufacturing base. But U.S. multinationals are more interested in extraction, natural resource extraction in the global south, in places like Argentina. So they're not interested in building up infrastructure. That takes a lot of money. That's the money away from their bottom line. That's not going to make their quarterly earning report look good. So despite what Argentinian president wants to do, the hard reality is there's not much U.S. can bring to the table right now. Joe Biden has been talking about build the world better, build the world back better for years. He's been talking about for like 2 or 3 years now. There's nothing coming out of it. It's nothing but talks. China, it's like Jerry Maguire, Rashid. Show me the money. Show me the money. China actually brings money to the table. U.S. just brings more hot air and talks.
Yeah, I was it brought to mind when the ambassador, I believe it was the Chinese foreign minister, I might be mistaken of whoever it was, but they met with Milei after he became president, and the Chinese, they blatantly told him, listen, if you want to align yourself to the West, we have no problems with that. If that's what you want to do, but don't expect us to finance you going to the West. On the one hand, you want a lifeline from us financially to keep your economy and your government afloat, and on the other hand, you're openly stating that you want to become a part of NATO and that you want to reorientate your economy to the West. You want our money to rebuild your economy to benefit the West. The Chinese say that's not happening. You can go if you want to go with the West, or we'll pull our money and you can do whatever you want to do. And all of a sudden he was, please, let's talk about these things. Why do you think that leaders like the new Argentina leader, the people in Armenia, with the Armenian leader, and all of these people are willing to sell their country and their people up the river just for a few extra dollars and a position in the Western world, which is quickly collapsing right in front of them?
Well, I think there's we can feel the collapse of Western hegemony because I have lived in U.S. for a long time. You're still in U.S., so for us it's obvious. The decline has set in, but there's a kind of lagging effect. People around the globe, they're still so used to the Western hegemony for so long, they just assume that's still the case. Because they haven't observed the decline up close. For those of us who have been to the inner cities in U.S., who have seen the crumbling infrastructures, we can see that the decline is for real. But there's still the memo hasn't gotten out to places like Argentina, to Armenia, and I mean the Armenian president is not doing his people any favors at this point. You have they're in the conflict with Azerbaijan, right? And Azerbaijan, with the support from United States and Israel, is is totally walking over Armenia. Russia is the only credible force that's preventing Armenia from getting run over by Azerbaijan at this point. Yet, what did he do? He turned toward the West. The West is the one that's funding his enemies. The West is funding their enemies. But yeah, that's and now the Russian peacekeeper is pulling out of the region. I mean, how does that help Armenians? But anyway, so I all these Western these pro-Western leaders, I don't expect them to last too long in the office, because after a few years, the reality is going to set in that this alignment with the West is not going to do them any favors, and yeah, I think it just takes time. It takes time for people outside of the imperial core to realize, yeah, the decline of the U.S. empire is for real.
And will it be too late? Because, and it seems like to me that these so-called leaders are so in a rush to sell out their national interests, because it doesn't take a rocket scientist, even if I'm not in America. It does not take a rocket scientist if I'm the leader of, say, for instance, Armenia, to not associate myself in a military bloc or political bloc with the EU and the US, especially as I'm watching them destroy Ukraine for their own selfish interests, as I'm watching them overthrow governments that do not agree with them, and how they're treating their own so-called allies like Viktor Orban and other leaders that won't walk the line that the West want them to walk. To me, those are red flags to not, hey, maybe I don't want to associate with them. Maybe whatever they promise me, let's keep it over there. Let me first think about my family and my nation's interest, because that should be paramount over everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in, say, in Armenia, but this is from as an observer from far away, it doesn't look like a wise choice they have made, especially when Armenia's main problem is they're facing from is Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan is being supported by the West, by the U.S. and Israel, militarily and financially, and yet they're trying to sleep with the enemy. That doesn't make sense to me. Like Russia for a while has helped to safeguard Armenia, but now they're turning away from Russia. How? But maybe because during the Russian sanction, it looks like Russia is maybe they miscalculated, thought, okay, this is it. Russia's power is being seriously curtailed. This is like the mistake a lot of people made in 1941. When the Nazi Germany were at the gate of Moscow. A lot of people were like, oh, okay, this is it. Soviet Union is on its last leg. But yeah, that would have been a great miscalculation. I think this is what a lot of people are. They made the mistake. They thought that the Russian sanction is going to bring Russia to its knees. So they thought, okay, maybe the Russian protection is not worth as much as before. But that's a grave mistake, because now we're seeing Russia is coming back.
And what do you think Russia's reaction should be from your perspective? I was reading that Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and a few other nations that are in economic unions with Russia and political union with Russia, and some of them are also in a military union with Russia, are now under pressure from the United States. They have accepted and said that they will no longer accept the Russian mirror payment system and the Russian payment cards. And the reason I ask you that is because a lot of those nations' economy depends large parts on remittances from Russia itself. So what would your response be, or what do you think Russia's response should be to those people who are willing to take a couple of dollars on the back end to like jug and stab at Russia a little bit economically?
Well, Kazakhstan, this is just my educated guess here. Kazakhstan, their main export is oil and gas, and maybe they're trying to maintain. They're hoping to maintain their access to the Western market by disassociate themselves from Russia. But they maybe for the fear of losing market access. But for places like Kyrgyzstan, Kyrgyzstan has been so screwed after the collapse of the Soviet Union, because it got cut off from. Before, it was embedded in the Soviet economic system, but suddenly it's getting cut off from all the natural resources. Kyrgyzstan doesn't have much natural resource. It doesn't have oil and gas like Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan has been the site of many color revolutions sponsored by the West. And at one point it hosted a supply base for the U.S. military, for their operation in Afghanistan. But how they're so far from the United States, so close to Russia. How can you think to side with U.S. is even a viable option? U.S. is already out of Afghanistan. At the one point, U.S. still had limited power projection into the region because U.S. military were stationed next door in Afghanistan. Now U.S. is already out of Afghanistan. Kyrgyzstan, it's to the east is China. It's a landlocked country. Maybe the politicians are trying to, they're just willing to take money from whoever willing to sponsor them. But at the end of the day, that's not going to help Kyrgyzstan's position. It's a landlocked country. It needs access to Russia. For like you said, their economy largely depend on remittances from Russia. Kyrgyzstan doesn't even have natural resources to sell to the West, unlike Kazakhstan. But I think Kazakhstan's case is they're trying to stay on the West good side because they want to maintain the market access to continue to sell their oil and gas. But they're also acting as a conduit right now as goods into Russia, because as long as Central Asian nations are not being sanctioned, they can still import goods from the West. Now that we can see the imports into Kazakhstan has been surging, but Kazakhstan doesn't have a large population. A lot of these goods are not staying in Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is just a transit point for these goods to go to Russia as a bypassing the Western sanction, and this is not just happening for Western goods, but Chinese goods too. Like for a lot of the any kind of goods that's deemed contraband by the West, Russia can get it through Kazakhstan. so in a way, it's useful actually for Kazakhstan to be a channel that's remaining to be open to the West, even if they have to make some concessions. But so Kazakhstan can serve as a window, kind of like the position that Hong Kong served during the Cold War. Hong Kong was the only window for trade with China to the West. I mean, that's kind of the position Kazakhstan is playing right now.
And I said that because I know even though Kazakhstan is shipping oil and gas to the West, they have to use Russian pipelines to do so. But when will you think the time will arrive for those nations to say to hell with the Western sanctions? Because listen, let's be honest, let's be frank about this. China makes everything. I mean, when will it come a time when those nations say, you know what, sanction whoever you want. We cast our lot with the global South. We're gonna whatever comes, we're gonna deal with it. Because how can you stop goods from getting into Russia if Russia and China have strategic partnerships, and China manufactures pretty much everything that the entire world consumes, and what they don't manufacture, they have Africa manufacturing it and shipping it for other people too. So, I mean, from technology, super fast trains, to educational, for engineering, for everything that you want, to goods on your shelves, food, flags, uniforms, everything comes from China now. Do you think that it is going come a time for those nations to say, listen, to hell with your sanctions. Whatever we need, we can get it from China, and we're going to just keep it pushing like that.
Well, this is why Scholz, the German chancellor, was in China recently, and one of his top agenda was talking to China, trying to convince China to scale back with their economic integration with Russia. It's like, oh, we need you to stop supplying Russia so we can do better in Ukraine. But China is like, that's none of our business, Like, why should we stop trade with Russia on your behalf? You come here, we can do business with you, with Germany, but we will also do business with Russia. We do business with everyone. We're not gonna. Why should we stop business with one just so to make you happy? If you want to do business with us, we're happy to do business with you. But you should tell us what to do with our other business partners. And and when it comes to China, they don't have much options. I mean, they can ask. China will just say no. but this is why, like, they're trying. They're screaming about decoupling from China, de-risking from China. But how is that going? How is all these? They can move some of the factories from China to Southeast Asia, for example. But Southeast Asia is economically integrated with China anyway. It's to say that they're somehow de-risking, decoupling from China. It's a fantasy. It's a fantasy. Right now you have factories in China that's completely automated. Robots are making electric cars. The robots are also making missiles. Even the Chinese missile factories are completely automated. They can crank out thousands of missiles. Is there just not much leverage West have over China? That's why Janet Yellen went to China multiple times. Every time she went there to ask for money, to ask China to buy more treasuries. But at the same time, she has to appeal to her domestic audience in the United States by criticizing China. Like, oh, China, you are producing too much. You're overproducing. It's like, why is that your business? If China overproduces, it makes the goods cheap, even cheaper. How is that the bad thing? You're actually pro-inflation. I mean, China is the one that's helping to keep the price down by their overproduction. So it's I mean, there's not much good. As for the rest of the countries in the global South, I think many of them are already signing up with economic integration with China. Many more, I think, they will eventually come around, even in places like Argentina and Armenia. I mean, they at the end of the day, all these places still need investment. They still need infrastructure. They still need to upgrade their economy, and that's not something U.S. can provide. U.S. don't do that anymore. I mean, U.S. haven't done that for a long, long time. The only thing U.S. could offer is military bases.
Carl, I was watching a program a few days ago, and it was an Eastern program. I believe it may have been on one of the Chinese television, but it had Western analysts on there. And one of the Western analysts, he was in the Pentagon and all of this, and he let the cat out the bag why they are in such a rush to try to pivot towards Asia, and why the United States constantly harps on secondary sanctions. And a lot of people don't know that the secondary sanctions are still aimed at China a lot also. And he was saying that because China has the largest amount of supercomputers, if the United States does not attack the chip industry, then how China is gaining momentum, it will be the United States will never be able to catch up or regain its position, because China has the most powerful supercomputers and the largest amount of supercomputers. And he says they can use everything. The supercomputers can help them with sixth generation technology, sixth generation warplanes, missiles that we've never seen before, air defenses. And it was like they were panicking because of that. Why isn't this talked about in the West?
Well, this is why the U.S. Ambassador Burns, who recently talked to the 60 Minutes, he said, any technological progress in China can be pivoted to military use. That's why we have to limit the Chinese technological progress. That's insane. You're trying to limit the technological progress of 1/5 of the humanity. 20% of the global population. You want to keep them from progressing. I mean, that's not going to work. It's failing right now. Gina Raimondo's policy right now is, okay, if the sanction on China is not working, it's not preventing Huawei from making a latest phone with 7 nanometer chip, we're just going to expand the sanction. Okay, so sanction is not working, we're just going to do more sanction. And Gina Raimondo actually said she was upset. She was upset that Huawei rolled out with this new phone. Like, why would you be upset by Huawei making a consumer like a consumer phone? Why you as a secretary, U.S. government official, U.S. Commerce Secretary, be upset at a Chinese company making a phone? I mean, this is ridiculous. But this is there's not much they can do right now. I mean, China already has the momentum. What you point out is right. They're trying to do the chip sanction on China because they saw that China has a competitive advantage in AI, because one of the AI depends on a large data set to train, and China has 1.4 billion people. They have a lot of data to train, so they thought, okay, China is gonna lead in AI. China is gonna lead in supercomputing. We have to cripple China's progress, and the way to do that is to limit their supply on semiconductors. But what that did is to identify to the Chinese and to point out, hey, semiconductor is the weakest link in your supply chain. And China is now laser focused trying to fix that fifth weakest link. Because before, China was importing average of $450 billion worth of chips every year, and most of it from US. China's spend more money importing chips than they spend importing oil. And now with US trying to cut off that flow, China is just gonna make that chips themselves. And once China start to make their own chips, all these Western companies that depended on China for their business, they're never gonna get that business back, because the Chinese companies, they know if they continue to depending on U.S. suppliers, they can get cut off anytime by a decree from the U.S. government. They rather buy from indigenous Chinese chip maker, even if they're maybe currently a couple generations behind, because at least they're still gonna get supplies. The chip sanction for a couple years did almost wipe out Huawei's phone business. I remember when I came to Indonesia in 2019. There's Huawei phone everywhere in all the shops. But then when the U.S. chip sanctions started, suddenly all the Huawei phone disappeared. It's now Huawei phone is coming back, taking back the market share. but not the other Chinese companies. They can see what happened to Huawei. It's like
Yeah.
that could be us. If we grow powerful, big enough, we're going to be on the radar of the U.S. sanction list. And if we continue to purchase, for example, Qualcomm chips from U.S., we can also get cut off. So we better explore our alternatives. So this is why U.S. sanctions, more than Chinese government's own initiative, are pushing all the Chinese private companies working together to buy domestic. China has trying to promote. People detractor always say, "Oh, China has been trying for decades trying to promote its own domestic semiconductor companies, but they didn't have much to show for it. They're always a couple generations behind." Guess what? Because in a globalized world, like a Chinese company like Huawei, like Xiaomi, their goal is to make the best quality product for the price their consumers are willing to pay. So they have no qualm of using Qualcomm chips because Qualcomm chips is the top of the line, right? And rather than source from like SMIC, who is a couple generations behind in technology. But now they have no choice. They can't go use Qualcomm chips. They can't go to Taiwan Semiconductor. Even Huawei for a while was designing their own chips to replace Qualcomm, but have them manufactured in Taiwan. But they don't even have that option anymore. So now they have to work with SMIC, the local China's semiconductor producer, to make their next generation chips. So what that did is this hundreds of $billions China used to spend to import chips are now getting redirected internally towards the Chinese domestic research and development and domestic manufacturing. And Qualcomm, one of their China is like their biggest customer. That because China makes electronics for the whole world, and a lot of the electronics contains chips. Before, China imported these chips from U.S., from South Korea, from Japan, from Taiwan. But now China is going to make their own chips, and China is already starting to ramp up production in the low end and the intermediate end of the chip production. And that's a chip production that's actually composes the majority of the world's chip market, because Taiwan Semiconductor still make most of the world's most advanced chips, like 5 nanometer, 7 nanometer chips, but 14 nanometer, 24 4 nanometer chips, China already have the manufacturing capability. They're ramping up production, and they're gonna completely dominate that market. Which composed of chips that go into your cars, into your fridge, into everything. It's only the phones that require small chips, because like phone, you need the real estate is very precious on a phone. But everything else, 14 nanometer could do, 24 nanometer could do, but China is continually piling all these money that otherwise would have spent on chip importing into their own domestic research and development. And it's only a matter of time when China could make the technological breakthrough that they won't have to depend on the Western chip import anymore. And that's the day all of the $450 billion dollar market is going to be all Chinese. That's the China will no longer spend $400 billion to import those chips anymore, and that's going to be devastating for all the Western tech companies. They're going to lose their China market forever, and this is all because the U.S. government policy. This is why a lot of the U.S. tech companies are telling Washington, please don't do this. You're killing us. They're killing our long-term prospect of our business, because before the U.S. sanction, the China's chip dependency on U.S. was actually growing year after year. As the Chinese economy is expanding, as the production is expanding, they needed more chips to go into everything. And so what U.S. did is pinpoint the problem Now China is fixing that, and now it's going to wipe out a lot of tech companies in the U.S. once China become completely self-sufficient.
And that's money that could be used in research and development in the West, but they are alienating the Chinese. And it's something I was thinking about something you said earlier about how the West they love to win through perception, not really on the battleground. And I noticed before they attacked Huawei, they also attacked another Chinese phone company. I forget the name of it. It was another Chinese phone company. And then they attacked Huawei, and Donald Trump tried to bring Huawei to his knees because it challenged the Western domination of that section of technology. Just like now they're talking about that TikTok is a national security threat, and they want TikTok to be transferred to the U.S. because this is a challenge to Facebook. It's a challenge to Twitter, Twitch, what is it? Instagram. TikTok has become the largest platform in the world, and it is a non-Western, non-white organization or platform, and this is unacceptable because the West cannot shape the narrative on there, and when they can't do that, they feel threatened because they can't win in competition, and and now without holding the reins of control, they can't win through this perception battle. I think that's a main thing. But something you said about Huawei, here is something that came out yesterday on CNBC. And it's titled, "After Chip Breakthrough, Huawei Launches Fresh Lineup of Phones to Challenge Apple in China." Now, I think this has unnerved a lot of people in the West because they thought that they would have that 1, 2, 3 knockout blow, just like they did with one of the other Chinese companies. But Huawei is showing its resilience. TikTok is showing its resilience. And I believe that not only is the Western governments involved, but I believe it has a lot to do with Facebook, Twitter, and all, because they see their share of revenue in decline because of the growth of Chinese and Eastern technology and Eastern platforms like Telegram and all of those things. Why does the West have to feel as if they have to dominate and control everything? Listen, if you're telling the truth, it may take a while, but the truth will come through. The truth will never be defeated, but they feel that they have to control everything to shape and mold the narrative. And if you don't go along with the narrative, then they use these platforms and these instruments of power to relegate you to a sidebar or something. Why do you think that is so?
Well, I mean, this is because the West is losing the competitive edge. They can't compete. I mean, this is why Google and Facebook they are behind the drive to ban TikTok because TikTok is their biggest competitor. U.S. talk a big game about we love competition. Capitalism is all about competition, but now when they can't compete with China, they want to certainly they want protection. They want tariffs. There was a time in 1990s, I remember, after Cold War, when U.S. was a champion of globalization, because what they're championing on is U.S. companies taking market share all over the world, like Facebook, like Google. But now when their own hegemony is under threat, when they realize they can no longer maintain their own their bottom line, suddenly competition is a bad word. It's because they can't compete. And this is also why U.S. will raise its tariff on Chinese EVs, because BYD is making a $10,000 car, a decent car for $10,000. U.S. automaker is not going to be able to compete with that. This is why they're going to have to raise tariffs on all Chinese EVs because BYD now makes a whole wide range of cars. They have the $10,000 car. but they also have like the higher end, $30,000-$40,000 car. That looks better than Tesla. So there's no people. Elon Musk knows this. Many of the U.S. automakers, they also know this. There's no way they can stand up to the Chinese competition. So they have to raise the trade barriers now. They have to talk about how everything from China is a national security. Chinese garlic is national security threat now. I mean, everything. Shein and the Temu is a national security. They're talking about, that's because the Chinese Communist government is going to put like a listening device, and they're gonna monitor you and survey you. It's like, yeah, that's what Facebook and Google do nowadays. I mean, we know NSA read our email. I actually have no problem if a Chinese government wants to spy on me with Huawei phone, because Chinese government have no jurisdiction over me. They can't do anything to me unless, say, FBI. So it's crazy that somehow they convince. Now, anytime the U.S. media they talk about China, it's 100% projection. It's because they know we are spying on the Americans with all these social media companies. Google, Facebook, they're all embedded with the U.S. military industrial intelligence complex, right? They all have a back door for the U.S. government, and now they just U.S. court just ruled that they can make you use your thumbprint to open your Apple phone. And so but we are supposed to worry about Chinese government spying on us. I mean, it's like, well, it's fine, okay. So Chinese government know my browsing habits. So what? What are they gonna do with that information? But yeah, we're living a bizarre world, and when they talk about surveillance in China, their projection on what the current state of United States is. Yeah. They are one of the things the Five Eyes want to ban Huawei is because the U.S. intelligence services is not going to get a backdoor through Huawei. They already have back doors through all other telecom channels, so they can listen to Angela Merkel. But they know they're not going to. The U.S. intelligence service is not going to get a backdoor through Huawei through their telecom networks, 5G. So they're like, okay, sorry, we can't have 5G because we won't be able to listening on everybody.
And it's crazy how they want to sanction China, and at the same time, you have people from California sending delegations to China to try to get China to invest in California and to build up high-speed railway and infrastructure and all of that stuff. On the one hand, China is a threat, but the money from China is no threat, though. I want to put this comment is up for you. You got what I just said. This comment is for you, and it's from Kitten Lang. This is what she said. Hold on, let's see if they're gonna. For Carl, how fast is China's offshore oil industry moving? I keep hearing about deep state platforms being dropped and prepped. Sounds like preparations for being Russia's partner in the Arctic.
Well, I'm not an expert in oil and gas industry. I mean, what China normally do is they don't put their eggs in one basket. So I'm sure they're investing in the deep oil platform. They're also having a lot of effort in after the fracking took off in the United States. China also put a study how China can tap into like the natural gas. But the problem, the geology in China is different from the United States. Whereas U.S. natural gas is a lot easier to tap into using the fracking technology. In China, it's a lot more difficult. And so I guess it really depending on geology. The different the deep water oil drilling is going to be different depending where you're doing this. But China is, again, it's not putting all its egg in one basket, because China is expanding very rapidly into sustainable energy sector. China leads the world in the solar production, wind
Yep.
power, hydro, and China is also building nuclear now. Now China is increasing a buildup of its nuclear power plant. So so and at the same time, China is pushing for EV because they want to reduce the dependence on the imported oil. Because a lot of the Chinese oil imports come from Middle East and come from Africa, and they have to travel through the Straits of Malacca up to South China Sea. And U.S. Navy has been talking for over 30 years about how they want to choke off the Straits of Malacca, to choke off the Chinese energy supply in times of war. So China is doing everything to diversify. They diversify their oil supply through Russia, and they're building a port they build a port and pipeline to Myanmar to pipe the oil tankers don't have to go through Strait of Malacca. They can just offload their oil and gas in Myanmar, and then it gets piped through from Myanmar to China. And they're building the ports in Gwadar in Pakistan, and Gwadar is right next to the Persian Gulf. So once that the pipeline completes through Xinjiang, then oil and gas can be piped through Gwadar across Pakistan all the way to China's back door. And China already and Russia is already constructing another gas pipeline, Power of Siberia 2, from Siberia gas field to China. The gas field that used to supply Europe, the Yamal gas field in the far north, and now it's going to be piped directly to the Chinese market. So China is prepared. They're diversifying their energy supply. They're going to continually to expand their sustainable their sustainable energy source, and they're going to expand their EV production. In March, the sales number, 48% of the new cars sold in China in March is EV. China could do that because they build out the charging infrastructure all across the country. People have said rightly that EV will not work in US because the US just don't have the EV infrastructure. You can't find charging stations, and even if you have the charging stations, you don't have electricity. The US power grid won't be able to support more EVs. If you look at the US power generation for the last 30 years, it's basically flat. They're not adding much capacity, whereas the Chinese electricity generation goes like this. Because Janet Yellen complains about China's overcapacity, overproduction. That's because Chinese economy is built for growth. They know they need to build for future growth, and so China has the infrastructure in place for the EV transition, and that also helps greatly with the pollution. Because I was in China in 2010, and I tell you what, in Shanghai you can cut the air with a butter knife, and it was pretty bad. You can see the air pollution. But when I went back to China, so Xi Jinping, when he took office in 2012, and one of his top priority that he made was to clean up the air, because the air in Beijing has gotten so bad. And I'll tell you what, it worked, because I went to China in 2019. One thing I noticed immediately is air got better. Just the street in general, the cities got a lot cleaner, and with their EV transition, that's even more dramatic, because a lot of the pollution is due to vehicle exhaust, and their adoption of EV is helping greatly with the pollution problem in urban China right now. So China is powering ahead in all fields. This is why it makes people nervous, and this is also what, like, recently there was I talked about this before. There was like many Americans returning back to China after being away for 4 or 5 years because of COVID, and they were pleasantly surprised. And then some of them Westerners who came to visit China for the first time, they were shocked. They were shocked because the China totally did not match their expectation of what their media have told them what China is. And they came to China expecting to see collapse and to see poverty, but instead they came into these ultra modern cities that surpass what they have back home. So this is why I think this is also why Chinese government have recently been relaxing travel. They're doing a lot of free visa. They're rolling out free visa policies for a whole host of European countries. So now, if you're a citizen of Spain, Portugal, Italy, France, Germany, Switzerland, Belgium, you can travel to China visa free for like 30 days, and they're also rolling out the 1 week transit visa. Like now, you don't even need a visa to go to China if you're just going to stay in one city. And as long as you can show them your return ticket at the end of the week, then you don't need a visa. You can travel to Shanghai, travel to Beijing, stay there for a week, and fly out without visa. So China is now making it more convenient for people to come because China actually is welcoming engagement with the rest of the world. They know by opening themselves up, they can allow people to come in and see for themselves. That will destroy 90% of the Western propaganda of China. And this is also China is sending signals. They're welcoming Western business. That's why you have like Tim Cook and other Western executives lining up to go to China. Because China is showing, hey, we're open for business. We may have issues with the U.S. government. Biden, we're not talking to him right now, but we will talk to you. We're willing to do business with you. And I think that's a sensible policy, because who knows if Biden is going to be in office 7-8 months from now. but China is showing it's the U.S. that's unilaterally putting up the walls to restrict trade, to trying to separate the world into two blocks. China is not forcing people to choose. China just want to do business. The business of China is business. Business of United States is war. That is a big difference. But yeah, I think China is definitely exploring more cooperation with Russia in Arctic, because with a global climate change, that means now the Arctic shipping route is open. And if people look at it's hard to see on a flat map, but if you look at the globe, it takes less time to travel through the Arctic from Shanghai to Europe than it takes to go through Red Sea. And the Red Sea is not open right now, so you have to go through around Africa. So it's much shorter through the Arctic route. But as more polar ice start to melt in the Arctic, the Arctic route will be a more reliable shipping route in the future. And this is where Russia has a big advantage, because a lot of this is going through Russia's territorial waters, and this is also this kind of completely bypass the Strait of Malacca. What's U.S. gonna do? U.S. is gonna block the Bering Strait with Russia. I mean, they can't do that. So China has another secure route to the world market.
Before we transition to the last part, which is Russia, Ukraine, and this geopolitical thing that's going on between the West and China and Russia. First of all, before I pose these next two questions to you, I want to give a shout out to Mehdi. Mehdi, our prayers are with you. If you had to deal with some things, he's a supporter of the channel, so we want to give a shout out to him live to tell him that we're here for him if he needs us. Also, if you like the program, please hit the like and subscribe We would really appreciate that. Now, we were talking about the EV situation in China and the solar panel system in China, because China is now clearly in the lead in every aspect of that. And remember, Elon Musk felt threatened by the Chinese EV division or whatever. And he went back and talked. And the United States is now starting to focus in sanctions on China's EV area and China's solar panel area. What will be China's response? Because to me, it seems like all of these sanctions are actually suicidal for the American empire.
United States claim it's for green energy, right? But the moment that China leads, they're like, no, actually, no, we don't mean we're not pro green energy if it's coming from China. But they're not gonna do any meaningful green energy transition without China. China produces most of the world's solar panels, and now they're putting tariffs on Chinese solar panels. It's almost like they're not serious about the green energy transition. So yeah, it's mind-boggling, because a lot of the thing that U.S. could actually work on in cooperation with China. For example, this is something I talked about before. United States power grid, which hasn't getting an upgrade for a long time. It's in need of upgrade, but a lot of the private company in US, they're not willing to put up the upfront investment. They just want to squeeze more juice out of the existing grid, and this led to problems like a storm could knock out a huge area, cause blackout in a huge area. That's why you have people freezing their ass off in Texas. But one of the problems that U.S. have is, the U.S. power grids are kind of disjointed. You have a power grid in Texas, you have a different grid in California and out in the East Coast. And one of the problem is the power transmission, because when you pipe electricity over long distances, there's a lot of power loss. But this is an area where China has solved the problem, because most of their hydro power plants are located in the southwest mountainous region, but most of their electric consumption is in the East Coast, along a lot of the urban centers in the East Coast. They have to cross the entire length of China to transmit that power. So China came out with a technology for ultra high voltage DC power transmission that allow transmitting power over long distances with minimal loss. And this right now, China holds all the IP in this technology. To even understand how this technology works, you have to be able to read Chinese, because all the menus are in Chinese. But that's something that U.S. could use. The U.S. could use to connect its power grids so like excessive power can be piped from one area to another in times of disaster, because U.S. have a very little excessive power capacity right now, especially in case of a climate emergency. And there's many more areas where U.S. and China can work on together. Like, why not buy solar panels from China? Buy batteries from China. Like, if U.S. wants to seriously start transitioning EV, for example, Chinese companies have a lot of expertise. They're willing to invest in U.S. If you give BYD a chance, they will put up a plant in U.S. in a heartbeat. They already have a plant in California, in Lancaster, but they're producing like electric buses and trucks mostly. But right now, what BYD is doing, because they're blocking from their market access in U.S., they're building in Mexico. They're building the plants in Mexico. Well, of course, one of their strategies is probably using Mexico as a launching pad to rest of the Latin America, but also to U.S. because Mexico is part of NAFTA, part of the North American Free Trade Zone. but Biden administration is already preempt that move. They're saying they're going to block the Mexican produced EVs from entering the U.S. market. So that was totally unnecessary. If U.S. simply say, okay, we welcome Chinese investment. BYD can open their plants in U.S. and then you'll be win-win. They don't have to go through all these jump through all these hoops to. But anyway, so it's right now the U.S. elite they're so cut off from reality. One of the problem is because U.S. is so deindustrialized, a lot of the talking heads, whether in media or in DC, they don't even understand how advanced manufacturing works. They talk about decoupling and de-risking from China, but they actually have no idea how things are made. And so this is why their attempt to decouple from China keep on failing, because China has built a whole ecosystem around manufacturing. It has all the suppliers. Moving to China and open Shanghai Gigafactory, that's what actually saved Tesla. Tesla was losing money until Elon Musk moved to China and opened up Shanghai Gigafactory. And it's because they were able to manufacture at the scale in Shanghai that allowed Tesla to turn their corner. And this is the area where U.S. and China could cooperate, because by welcoming Tesla into China, China did not ask for tech transfers. They say, okay, you can own Tesla 100%, but we ask you to use a percentage of Chinese suppliers. So that way you kind of foster the whole ecosystem of Chinese suppliers for EV, and those Chinese suppliers then can turn around and eventually sell to the Chinese EV makers, other Chinese EV makers. This is how it's a win-win. It benefits everybody. But that's not what the U.S. The problem is still the mentality. The U.S. elite mentality is never about win-win. It's always about zero sum. It's all for me, none for you. And Putin was right. Putin said, unless that mentality of hegemony changes, nothing is going to change. You're still going to have all the shitty politics you have right now.
Carl, how dare you say that China has a monopoly on this new technology? China is non-Western, non-white. How dare you? They had to steal that technology. They could not have come up with it on their own. They had to steal it. It's crazy how they think. The Western mind is so warped. But a lot of people are waking up to the reality of what the governments in the West are feeding them. Now, I want to transition over to Russia. And as you said, the new shipping routes are opening. We see Ukraine on its last leg, the Ukrainian military on its last leg against Russia. Carl, why? This goes for Iran, China, North Korea, and other nations. Why, when the United States and the Western world accuses of those nations of helping Russia or helping other nations, those nations either deny it or just brush it aside? If it were me, I would be, I help. Aren't you helping Ukraine? Aren't you helping Germany? Aren't you helping this? Aren't you doing this? Why are you so concerned about me helping my friend? Isn't that the friendly thing to do, to help my friend, just like you're helping your friend? Why do you have the prerogative only to help your friend or your allies? Shouldn't that be the mindset of these governments and these leaders? Shouldn't they just openly say, hey, listen, yeah, we're helping them. What's to do about it? It's none of your business. We're not telling you what to do with your allies in NATO. We're not telling you not to sell them Apache helicopters and warships and warplanes. Why are you so concerned what we're giving our strategic ally?
Well, the Western hegemony is crumbling, but U.S. still maintain a lot of power. The de-dollarization trend is accelerating, but So right now, they still maintain a lot of power over the world financial system. So this is why a lot of the countries at this point, they still kind of have to appease to the U.S. demand. When for example, we talked about earlier the example of Kazakhstan. Um, they have to make certain concessions in order to maintain their own market access to the Western capital, to the Western financial system. Um, but this is where hopefully BRICS can come out with a viable alternative with the BRICS currency. Um, and this is one of the financial hegemony was one of the last leg of the U.S. hegemony over the world. I always say the U.S. empire is a three-legged beast. You have one of the pillar is financial, one is military, one is technology. I mean, we already seen the military and technology leg are starting to become wobbly, right? I mean, but the financial leg, if that one goes, if the dollar hegemony goes, everything else goes with it. The U.S. will not be able to maintain its technological and military edge without the dollar hegemony. So, but it's going to take time. It's there's a Chinese word phrase called "百足之虫，死而不僵," which means like a worm with 100 legs. Even after they die, they don't get stiff right away. So it's gonna the dollar hegemony. I think it's gonna be a slow death. It's gonna be a slow death. It's gonna unravel. I think probably over a decade. But once that do happen, that's when people can throw off the shackle, and they can finally say no to Washington. And they don't have to be worried about getting cut off from SWIFT and so on and so forth.
All right. Now, Carl, do you have enough time for 3 or 4 more questions?
Sure. Just let me go clear my throat for 1 second.
Okay.
I want to get some water. I'll be right back.
Okay. So everybody in the chat, excuse me, put your question in. Whichever one that the thing scrolls down to, I'll go to him and have him to directly address your question. Okay. I actually wanted my guy Real Truth Talk on the platform, and I was going to send him the link so that he could talk to Carl. But yesterday when I was on his platform, I think he and his wife and his daughter, I think they were on vacation, and I was like, man, they're having a good time. I'm not going to bother them. I'll catch them next time around. So everybody, if you have a question, please put it in the chat real quick, and Carl will address it. Let's see if they're putting a question in the chat. Give it a second, Carl. All right. Carl, I love your phrase, copium. I'm going to steal that, and I'm going to use that phrase, copium. I love that. I see. All right, here we are. Here's one. 100%, Mr. Zha. Where is the U.S. going to get its steel castings from?
So this is where, okay, so Biden now they're going to talking about increasing tariff on the Chinese steel. This is an election gimmick because U.S. is facing a tough election, and now he's trying to appeal he's trying to win in Pennsylvania, right? This is a real reason Biden is doing this. But U.S. own steel industry is in trouble. U.S. Steel, Nippon Steel, the Japanese steel maker right now is trying to buy out U.S. Steel because U.S. Steel is in trouble. Now, some of the U.S. lawmakers are talking about trying to block this acquisition. But guess the funny thing is, the Nippon Steel, they try to come up with something that's palatable to Americans. So they say, by our acquisition of U.S. Steel, we're going to help U.S. to counter China. So everything is to counter China nowadays can justify its existence. But the whole reason why is the U.S. steel industry is not doing well. It needs cash injection. It needs more investment. It needs technological upgrade. But yeah, I don't know how U.S. politician is going to handle this. This is very tough because China for decades have provided with cheap quality steel to the U.S. market, and if U.S. is going to cut that off, and then they're blocking the cash infusion from Japan into the U.S. steel, where are they going to? I mean, okay, it's just going to make eventually. I mean, I guess it could make steel domestically, but it will make everything more expensive. The TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor, which was basically forced to open factories in U.S., they just came out and said other foundries that were built outside of Taiwan, whether in U.S., Germany, it's gonna there will be a cost premium. Their chips manufactured in U.S. is going to be more expensive than the chips they currently produce in Taiwan, and they're estimating it will be somewhere around 30% more expensive, and this is because the rising price of labor and land, and this is another problem the U.S. policymaker have to deal with. The rising inflation. They're already facing with rising inflation because they're printing money like mad. And on top of that, by cutting off from China, that's not going to help with inflation. That's only going to raise the inflation even higher. How much inflation can American consumers take? I was shocked when I went to U.S. last year to visit my parents. I dropped $20 on a Carl's Jr. meal. I thought it was a fast food restaurant. Why am I spending $20 on a meal at a fast food restaurant? But yeah, it's crazy.
So, I'm gonna say something that Jenny Lynn says, but first I want to say something that was going on in the chat. I think the three best foreign ministers of any nation, and you can put them in any order because at any day I think they are awesome. Wang Yi, Lavrov, and Pandora from South Africa. I think those three. She does not get the credit that she deserves, but she is one of the best foreign ministers out there. Those three, and I heard somebody in there says Jaishankar of India. Now, I think he's an excellent foreign minister for India, but I have a problem with Modi because everybody wants to overlook the genocide that took place in India when Modi was a governor of a state and they had all of those people killed, and everybody just pushes that out of their head. Modi should be brought up on genocide charges. I don't care what anybody says. And the facts speaks for themselves. When thousands of people under his leadership were killed, so I'll put that out there like that, and you can take that how you want to. But Jenny Lynn says this in reference to something you said about TikTok, and I thought it was hilarious. About the U.S. saying that TikTok is a national security threat, and she has this to say there is two parts. The first part she says they're pissed they can't get into Chinese phones. And then she says, right here, she says, I'm sure China is really interested in how many cat videos I watch. So I thought that was hilarious because, I mean, that's common sense. What Jenny is doing, even though she's relaying it with a little bit of comedy, she's using common sense to show you just how foolish these policies that these governments continue to try to trump up to try to hold back another nation's progress. Carl, man, I'm telling you, I always love doing the show with you, man. I love it, man. I mean, you just like the audience say, kick butt.
Thank you.
So we got to do this again soon, Carl. In closing, what do you have to say to the people that are viewing and that will view later?
I just want to make one more comment about what you said about Modi. I mean,
Okay, go ahead.
Modi was banned from entry to United States, for his
Yes.
role as a Gujarat governor. But that ban was lifted or suspended after Modi became the prime
Prime
minister
Minister.
of India. Yeah, so I mean, it's like U.S. just start to bend its own rules. Okay, like yeah, we know he did this, but because he's a prime minister, we have to deal with him. Okay, but now they're trying to promote a strategic partnership with Modi's India because they want India to sign on containing China, right?
Mhm.
And India has its own reasons to align with United States. For example, every time there's an election in India, suddenly there's a border issue with China. Like
Yep.
every single time, like you like the border issue will go away for a couple of years, and when the election kicks up, and suddenly there's border tension.
Yep. Right about. Did we lose contact? Carl, are you still there? Come on, YouTube. Everybody, I think YouTube. Hold on. Let's see if Carl is still here. Carl, everybody just hold tight. If Carl is disconnected, maybe he'll jump back in real quick before we go off there. You see it live on the air. It's not us, as we often say, but we'll try to keep it going until Carl gets back on the air if he can get back through. So a lot of people don't know that under Modi, as a governor of one of the states in India, his party committed mass genocide. And it's amazing how the United States ignores that. It's amazing. It's amazing how they treated him like a rock star when he came to the United States, and they did not mention. Now, this is the land of so-called democratic values and human rights. And they did not mention that because they needed to use India as a bulwark against China. That's crazy, isn't it? But that's what we go through. And that's what we're seeing in politics. So when we talk about Jaishankar, yes, he is an excellent politician trying to push the agenda of his party. Remember that he is a member of the party that Modi is a member of that is responsible for mass genocide according to the UN. Right? So when we look at that, we disqualify him in that regard. And we say that the top three foreign ministers are Sergei Lavrov of the Russian Federation, Wang Yi of the People's Republic of China, and Pandor of South Africa. Those three, hands down, are the best without question on the international stage, period. There are no analogs to those three. There are no equivalents, none of that. Those three do the best job for their nation. Now, I guess Carl was cut off. So listen, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me. I'm not going off yet. I want to say these few words to you all. We've been blocked from doing using StreamYard for a minute. We're trying to get past that to do live streams on Patreon and to also do channel streams. Hopefully we'll be over that hurdle in a day or two. My son is very clever on these computers. And when we do, we'll be streaming. We have some more guests coming up for you all. Please, we've had 100 and some people in the almost 200 people joined us live. YouTube will say 2 or 3 after the show. But you all know there cannot be no 2 or 3 when you saw all of the comments in the comment section. They're suppressing us, so I'm going to need your help. Share the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you have not subscribed. It doesn't cost you a thing. It doesn't cost you a thing, but that's the way we can continue to go and continue to grow. If you would do that, I'll continue bringing you the best guests and the best information so that you can make the best possible educated guest for the security of you and your family. On that note, know that I love you with all the love in my heart if you love truth. But know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that the divine supreme being has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. And remember this, to do right by yourself and do right by others, not because people are watching and not because you're thinking of some kind of benefit, some selfish benefit. Do it because it's the right thing to do, because even when all of the eyes are turned and no one's watching you, the Almighty will still be watching you. Do it for the respect and the love of the Almighty, and because it's your duty as a human. And we got called back in. Oh man, this is awesome. We're not even going on. We got called back in the booth. Carl, how's it going? Man, I'm glad you're back in.
I have to restart my internet. I mean, Bali, I got to do that at least once a day.
Okay. So Carl, I wanted to ask you something before we go off there.
Yeah.
That is something. How is China going to deal with the situation with the U.S. trying to use India as a blunt object against China and its rise? Because I think India, and this is my perspective, and you can say whatever, and if it's right or wrong in your eyes, but I think India still hasn't gotten over the defeat in 1962 by the Chinese, and I think they're holding that grudge so long because remember before that they were China and India were good friends and allies, but Nehru would not listen to the security concerns of the Chinese, and the Chinese kept saying, "Hey, listen, you have to stop this. You got to chill." And he thought because he had the backing of the West and stuff that he could do what he wanted to do. And the Chinese said, "You know what? We're going to teach him a lesson." And the Chinese beat the brakes off the Indians. And they were, if they wanted to, they could have went to New Delhi and they had seized land and they pulled back. It was not a requirement. The Chinese government called the troops back after entering into India. Why do you think nobody talks about that? And why do you think that India is still butthurt from an event that they started?
Well, I think first of all, India government was never, never tell the truth to its public. Right after the war, Indian government commissioned a investigation. It's called the Henderson Report. I mean, now we are in year 2024. Henderson Report is still classified because the Indian government claimed that because it will reveal some military secret, so they can't reveal to the public. But there was an Australian journalist, Neville Maxwell. Through his connections, he had the Henderson Report leaked to him, and based on the Henderson Report that was leaked to him, he wrote a book called India's China War. And it didn't put India in a good light. I mean, now I understand why Indian government keeps the Henderson Report classified after all those years, because it basically says India started the border conflict. But this basic fact hasn't been conveyed to the Indian public. In India, the popular narrative is China backstabbed India. India was trying to be friendly with China. There was a period, so they understand there was a period of friendship called the Hindi Chini Bye Bye, the Indian Chinese brothers. But they feel it's China that backstabbed Nehru in the back by starting the conflict, when the truth is exactly opposite. The border war got started when Nehru sent the troops across. Yes. There was a line that was arbitrarily drawn by the British, McMahon Line. But the Indian military, when they went to the McMahon Line, they saw, well, I think the line was not drawn to the spirit of the line, because there's a section we feel the McMahon made a mistake. It should have been over there on the so they unilaterally tried to move the border even deeper into the Chinese territory. And it's when they cross the McMahon Line, and that's when the Chinese counter-strike. But that fact is not very well known inside India. So the common narrative among the Indian public is that, oh, China backstabbed them, and so that stokes the Indian nationalism for ever since 1962. So this is one reason, and another reason is because it's for political interest. The Indian military establishment, every time the border tension flare up, that's an excuse for them to ask for an increase in the military budget. So it's very convenient for the Indian military, but it's also very convenient for Indian politicians, both the ruling party and the opposition. They always say the opposition is like, the ruling party is not doing enough to stop the Chinese aggression, and the ruling party is like, we're standing up to the Chinese. So So the border issue is very convenient for you, for the Indian political elite. Like I said, every election cycle, suddenly the border tension magically just flares up. Um, like, but in India, everything is blamed on China. But like, look, why would China want to start border tension with India? What does China gain by starting border tension with India? I mean, so that just doesn't make sense. Now, China is right now trying to still keep India in the BRICS. Is trying to engage with India. China has invited Modi on multiple occasions to visit and to engage with India under the BRICS forum or the Shanghai Cooperation Forum, because China doesn't want to push India completely into the U.S. camp. Um, but India is also being India sees itself as inheritor of ancient civilization. It sees itself as a great power on par with China. So it also doesn't want to play like the pawn for the United States, the way the Ukraine, was a proxy. India doesn't want to, take the bullet for the U.S. To die for the team U.S. fighting China. What India wants is to maximize its own influence and power. At this present time, it feels that by aligning with the U.S. versus China, it can gain, Western access for technology, for military help, and for some diplomatic backing in the international stage. But India is also remaining its friendship tie with Russia, because India has a traditional friendship with Soviet Union. So India is not giving up buying Russian oil and gas. And the tension India has is with China, like you already mentioned, because their defeat in the 1962 war. They're still smarting over that. And inside India, there's also the interest of the Indian oligarchs who are backing Modi. Ambani family, they have a monopoly in many areas in the Indian economy, and particularly they're expanding their monopoly to the technology sector, because a lot of the Chinese money are pouring into India to fund the Chinese to Indian tech startups, and that's threatening Albani's tech monopoly over India. So this is why he used the border conflict with China to get Modi to ban TikTok in India, and then Ambani partnered up with Zuckerberg, with Facebook, to form this new platform called Geo, which is basically they use a wrapper around the core Facebook platform and serve as a social media platform in India. So this way, the Indian oligarch, they maintain their monopoly over the Indian economy in cahoots, in profit sharing with the Western oligarchs like Zuckerberg. So they have an interest to keep the Chinese investment from coming into the country. Because they were funding Indian tech startup that started to challenge their monopoly. So there's a confluence of factors that influence the Indian position. But India is not going to be the one that's going to be the foot soldier for the United States. They're doing it for their own benefit. So this kind of makes India a little bit different from, say, the Philippines. Right? Because Philippines right now is acting as a cat's paw for U.S. in South China Sea versus China. India will continue its engagement with Russia. It will continue engagements with U.S. and you will also continue its engagement with China. And this is where China wants. China is fine as long as India is not completely in the Western camp, because India at the end of the day, it's the world's most populous country. Its population just surpassed China. India's economy is still growing. The Indian economy growth is actually pretty impressive if you're not comparing with China. Comparing with everybody else, India's economy is actually growing at a fast rate. It's only when people do side-by-side comparison with India and China, it looks like India is falling behind. But India is actually doing a lot better than many other countries. So India is an important country. This is why China BRICS will continue to engage with India, despite its entanglement with US in the Quad and all that. Basically, both sides are trying to woo India, at least have India as a neutral party. I think, but unfortunately, I think the border issue will not likely to get resolved anytime soon, because there's so many interested parties in India to keep it going for their own interest. And so that, and the memory of 1962 is still lingering. So I think you probably, within this current generation, we're probably not going to see too much improvement in the Indian-Chinese ties, unfortunately. But it is what it is. This is my take.
Well, thanks, Carl. Everybody, listen. I know we've been having problems streaming on YouTube. We have, for channel members, we just dropped a pre-recorded video, and we did it on Patreon. We'll be dropping multiple pre-recorded videos on the platform in the upcoming days. Please subscribe to the Patreon and go over to Locals. It's free. Go over to Locals and join. Hey, Carl, man, from the bottom of my heart, man, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rashid. It's always fun talking with you. I always have
likewise, man. I love it. I love it. We got to do this again very soon, Carl.
I agree.
All right, Carl, salute you. Everybody, listen, as we go out, remember what I said, from with all the love in my heart I have for you, please treat everybody better. Look at yourself, do a self-appraisal, and treat people as you would have them treat you. All right? And when we do that, we can build better, think better, live better, and life becomes so much more enjoyable. On that note, let me say this to you all. Let's keep building the platform, regardless of the censors, regardless of YouTube, regardless of all the people that are trying to. Anything in its infancy has trouble. Remember that. But anything worth having goes through the trouble. Listen, you cannot get steel without fire. You can't get gold without fire. Because the gold has to be refined. The silver has to be refined. It has to be put through the fire. This is what we're going through right now. Everybody talks about truth. Well, we know that these people are against the truth, but this is a vehicle to propagate and promote the truth. So we're going to go through the fire of censorship, suspension, and all of that stuff. But let's hold on. Let's do this together. Because remember, no matter how much they try, and no matter how much power they try to accumulate, God is always victorious. He has yet to lose a battle. He's won every last one of them and will win every last one of them. On that note, I love you with all of my heart. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Thank you, each and every one of you. We're out of here. Deuces, everybody. Peace.